So now this is the part where I actually get to start working on the car. These electric cars are obviously going to a little bit different as far as some of the steps you have to take. Like if this was a 12-volt car, we would already have this car halfway apart. Fernando would already have door panels off and he'd be rocking and rolling on it. These cars are going to be a little bit different as we move forward. And there again, as we move forward, things like what we just went through might not be necessary. Like we might get better at it. We might figure out new tips and tricks and all those other fun things. Right now we're playing it as safe as we can because Alpine says to do this. We're just doing what they're telling us to do. We got a lot of parts to get into this. Fernando, are you ready to get started taking things apart?
Yes.
I'm curious as hell about the dash because I want to see what that looks like underneath there. I've always wondered. I'm going to start there. He'll probably need to help me because it's a left and right thing, but let's get to it. Enjoy the journey, guys. According to the instructions, it tells me I can remove this rubber boot, the weather trim, to get access to this panel here and the A-pillar. What I need to do is remove this and remove that. For that, I'll be using my red panel tool. The other thing to note is that this door is open and it's driving me crazy because typically when I'm working on the front, I close the back doors. This is definitely gonna be something yeah, gonna take a minute to get used to because I was like almost ready to close it and I was like, don't close it. To remove this panel, there's a clip located here at the top and a slide located here at the bottom. Unclip it, slide it up. Feels very cheap. Very cheap. Airbag safe clip here at the top. Super cool. One of the easiest ones ever taken out. It actually stays up here in place. It looks just like a normal clip with this like pacifier looking thing wrapped around it. The one that is kind of weird is the very bottom one. Here is a metal clip. It almost seems like an afterthought going to the metal clip. And that's the one that's a little bit harder to get out. You have to put your hand in there and kind of pop it off. As far as A-pillars go and removing, the difficulty on this is it's like 2. Like this was one of the easiest A-pillars to get off, but it feels really cheap, which is gonna suck. Because going forward, you know, this car in 3 or 4 years, it'll be interesting to see how it works. The passenger side comes off the exact same way. To get this front grille out, plastic panel tool, you're going to come in between, it'll start to pop up. Just kind of work your way around the whole thing, going nice and slow, until you reach the far side over there. Put the whole thing off, just bring it up towards the windshield while you're removing it. That way these little clips that are sticking down, these clips right here are kind of sharp and pointy. There's no metal on them, which is nice, but there's a whole bunch of them. You don't want this to scratch leather on the dash. There's also clips on the backside, so once you get the front up, you just pull it up along the windshield to get out. And that reveals the dash speakers. We have one here in the corner, one here in the center, and then we have the same over here on the far side. Now coming back to the center speaker, one of the curiosities was not every car has that tweeter filled in. It's just some cases it's an empty hole. Kit does come with a tweeter and a Y jack if it doesn't have one there from the factory, but the problem you run into is on the grill. This is solid. Lucky for us, this is not solid. We can put a tweeter here. If you were listening really close, you kind of heard like sound, and that was the foam that's on the dash. This is the defogger vents here, and there's really thick foam, this stuff right here, and it's easy to crush. There again, in a couple years I'll be interested to see what this foam looks like, especially here in Florida. Foam in cars, especially in direct sunlight, really doesn't do too well. Hopefully it's like a UV foam of some kind. We'll see. I got it out, pretty excited. Let's take a look and see what is going to go up in the dash. To get the speakers out, it's going to require a T20 Torx. The one up here in the corner of the window is going to be the hardest one to get at. You're not going to be able to get in it with your standard screwdriver type apparatus. We're using one of these cool little ratcheting wrenches to do that. It is a very tight fit. So each one of these turns is actually making quite a bit of difference. Tesla is actually using a plastic thread screw instead of what everyone else is using, which isn't really made for what we're using them for. Now, if you want to be as efficient as possible, you can switch to the screwdriver and get this back one. Lift up, pull forward. There is a clip located on the bottom. Push it in, and here you go. Join me at the bench. We'll take a look at this compared to our new Alpine. This is the EV40MT, which stands for front dashboard Tesla specific mid-range car speakers. And then I'm not gonna read the rest of these, but we have a 4-inch or 10.2 centimeter driver. There's 3 of them and a tweeter, according to this picture. We'll open it up and find out in a minute. 40 watts of power handling, 160 watts of peak power handling. This is new. I've never seen this on an Alpine box before. It's this product of DSP sound system. But what I don't see on this anywhere is a high res indicator. So for those who are like, this is not high res as much as you'd want it to be. However, according to the other parts of the box, which we all want to look at, it goes through and tells us the part number, the power handling. Now we have the impedance, which is 4 ohm. Cutout diameter is 3.6 inches. Mounting depth is 1 3/4 inches. And frequency response is 100 to 20,000. Another picture. This side repeats the same, but adds that product of DSP sound system. More of the same information, now in a different language. Flipping it over to the back of the box, we have specifications, unit type, mid-range, 4-inch, tweeter, 1-inch, maximum RMS, maximum peak, impedance sensitivity is 90 dB, SPL 1 watt, 1 meter, cutout diameter. Design specification is subject to change without notice. And then there's a warning, and there we go. So a lot of neat stuff to glean from the box, as always. But let's open it up and see what we want. What is in the box? And sure enough, there is 3 of these, I like to call them European style drivers, and 1 tweeter located here. Let's take a look at these. Isn't this pretty? And I mean that. Like, this blue and black carbon fiber that's on here is absolutely gorgeous. This, the way they've done it with the Alpine style of just, it looks like aluminum that has been milled down. It reflects light. Look at that. Oh my gosh. If nothing else, these are some of the prettiest speakers I've seen in a long time. I love this look. And there again, could it just be biased because I'm tired of seeing black and gray and yellow? Maybe. But this blue is so sexy. Oh my gosh. On the back side, neo magnet motor structure, composite cone, and of course it has the factory plug already on it. The tweeter comes epoxied into its mount. So this is the whole thing. Like this goes bad, you're getting a new one of these. Has the factory plug, has the capacitor. It is a cloth dome tweeter, composite mount, very factory looking as we would expect. We'll be adding the tweeter into the installation. In some cases you won't be, you'll just be putting back in the box and feel sad about it, or ordering new parts for your car in order to do it. But let's take a look at what we're going to be replacing. Here it is. Look at this. It's actually not the worst speaker we've all seen, right? We've seen some pretty bad speakers. Composite basket, neo magnet, yeah, that's right, factory neo magnet, which to be fair, a lot of manufacturers use for the weight. Shipping costs are more expensive than the difference in price between this and a bigger, heavier magnet. It's worth it to go with these, especially when you're shipping pallets and pallets of these things. It has a rubber surround. Big thumbs up there. Paper cone, paper dust cap. I mean, all in all, it looks like an okay factory speaker. Some of my major complaints would be, this is in the dash of the car. Paper, it's gonna fade. It really is, unless this has some form of a UV treating. And there again, I know the windshield has tons of UV in it, and time will tell, right? Once we start seeing these 3 and 4 or 5 years down the road and we see what these things look like, if they're no longer black, then we know this was a bad idea. With that being said, it doesn't matter because these are gonna go in there. As you can see, it has the same unique hole pattern. If we line these up, they're physically the exact same size. Let's do a depth check, and they're the same depth as well. That is just how these things go and why they're using a neo magnet also, because there's not a lot of room in the dash. Even though they are the same depth, this speaker does sit up higher than this speaker, which is hopefully something that Alpine took in consideration when going to this, because as we've seen before, when this speaker moves up and down, unlike this one, which is inset a little bit, it will have some travel room. Hopefully the grill on this is positioned far enough away to where that isn't going to be an issue. Now that we know all that, there's nothing stopping us. Let's get these guys into the car. One of the nice things about our new speaker is this 6-inch pigtail right here. You saw how hard it was to get this wire. It's very short, which I understand, but now we have a little bit of extra. Easily plug that in, feed it down into the dash, spinning this until we line up our holes. Hand tighten the screws into place just to get them all lined up. This does make it a little easier. Of course, that one at the windshield is a super pain in the butt. I like to work my way around, not doing maximum tightness until the very end. That way the speaker sits nice and level cable, and there we go. Our speaker is in place. The other two speakers go in the exact same way. The one that is different is the center channel located over there because we're going to be adding the tweeter into the location. Let's take a look at that. The dash speaker in the center is definitely one of the funner of the speakers. The two screws, the one on the driver's side and the one towards the front of the dash here closest to you, you can get out using a ratcheting style. However, the one closest here by the windshield, that's a whole nother headache. For that, we have this tool, which is like half of a bit attached to a piece of metal that we use to get that one out because I can barely fit a finger here. This one is very slow to get out. Definitely not a fun speaker. And there we go. It's the exact same speaker that we took out of the other location. Join me at the bench. I'll show you how we're going to get into this with a tweeter and a mid-range. The system comes with this big bag of wiring, which we're not ready for yet. But inside of this big bag of wiring is this little tiny Y connector. We knew the kid had it because Eric Brooks, when we talked to him about this kit, explained, hey, here's the problem with the center channel. This is the solution. It has a single female connector here, and it has two male connectors here. On one side it says TW, and on the other side it says mid. TW is for the tweeter, which would explain the capacitor. It simply plugs in, and the other side will go to the mid like this. Now we can't assemble it like this here on the bench because we need to plug this in and then pull the wires out through the two separate holes. This is essentially how we're going to install the extra tweeter into the dash. Now if your car already has a tweeter, you won't need to do this because the wiring will already be there for it. Let's head back over to the car.